Okay, let's get started. So thank you very much for joining us again, everyone. This is the fourth installment of our golf swing webinar series. I'm Coach Brian. I'm the TPI Certified golf fitness professional here at Lynx. And on the line with us today, we've got Ryan Peffer, who is our PGA professional and director of instruction here at Lynx. He's also the assistant golf coach at Boston College. And then we've got PGA professional Jeff Atkinson, who's an instructor here at Lynx as well. And today, what we're going to go over, we've talked throughout the series about basically the entire golf swing from setup to finish. And today, we're really going to talk about the impact position. So the moment of truth in your swing, where is your club at impact, where's your body at impact, and how that's going to affect the way you hit the ball. So Ryan and Jeff are really going to spend a lot of time discussing how they work with their students on their impact position, what kind of drills they do. And then from the physical fitness standpoint, we've covered a lot of the characteristics of a good golf swing as far as mobility, strength, hip mobility, hip rotation. That is what we covered last week as far as, you know, the stance and setup. So what we're going to focus on today is power, okay? How do you generate more power in your swing? How do you produce more force? And then how do you do that through your training? So there's some specific ways that we can manipulate our training so that we're training more to produce power. And it's something that, all things being equal, a more powerful golfer is usually a better golfer and hits the ball further, and that makes it easier to score. So we're going to start out with the impact position. So I'm going to throw it over to Ryan, and Ryan's going to talk about some of the things he works with his students involving impact and then the importance in the swing.
Thanks, Brian. Hello. A little bit of a brief recap on how to first address how to get to a good position at the top, but I'm really going to focus on, like Brian was saying, how do you get into a powerful impact position. So let me back up here for a moment so you can see my body. Okay. So starting out in your address position, what I'm really working with on most of my students, and I've got a pitching wedge in my hands right here, but I'm going to refer really to the full swing. So what I'm looking to see is a stance where your width of your feet are basically underneath your shoulders, and the ball position is about 3 inches back of the inside of your left foot. So it's left of center. Okay, you get set up, and your hands. One of the biggest questions students ask is, where do my hands go? Well, where they go is really up the inside of your left thigh if you were looking at someone from the head-on angle. So they should meet your right and left hands right around the inside of your left leg if you're a right-handed player, okay? So from there, what you're going to try to do, essentially, in your backswing, if you're physically capable, is you want to engage your core and your torso to take the club back. The most common fault here is players, because the golf club is something that's relatively light, they tend to take it back with their hands and arms, and it's really lifting the club. But what you want to try to do instead is feel like your core and your shoulders are engaged, and they take the club back, okay, away from the golf ball. So a good analogy or a visual, I believe, for a lot of players is, imagine you're holding a bucket of driving range balls in your hand instead of a golf club, something with some more weight, and you're trying to turn that back and basically get the sensation that you're setting it on a shelf, all right? So you wouldn't do that just with your hands and arms. You would want to turn your torso so that your back faces the target. Where we're at here. Then from there, you're going to continue to turn, and you're going to allow your pelvis or your hips to rotate a little bit with your torso, okay, to get into a good position at the top of your swing. Now, how do I get to a good impact position from there, and what does that look like, okay? Well, what it looks like is if you take someone that is at a good address position, show you from a different angle, okay? Your shoulders and your feet and hips are all aligned parallel to the target. And from here, if you weren't to move the club at all with your hands and arms, if you were just to set the club down in a good address position and turn your left, if you're a right-handed player, your lead leg, pocket, front pocket here, over your ankle, okay? So you're set up in address, and basically what impact is it's this. All you're doing is, the difference is that your pelvis is rotated, your shoulders are still parallel to the target, okay? But basically your hips have rotated somewhere around 45 degrees to the left, okay? If you follow me there. And that's what impact should look like. So what does that mean from this angle? Well, really, or what does it look like rather? It looks like this. My hands and arms are still meeting. My hands are meeting off the inside of my left fly. The shaft with an iron or a wedge is leaning a little bit towards the target, okay? And what do I feel? In my left leg, I should feel like I'm applying pressure over my ankle and my heel, okay? And I would say about 90%, if not more, of my weight is on my left leg. My right foot is just here to steady me, okay? And I have maybe 5 to max 10% of my weight on my trail leg, okay, back here. So what does this look like for most amateurs? Well, a lot of amateurs or higher handicap players tend to try to lift the golf ball with their hands, okay? So what happens is when you try to do that, you're in a weak impact position. You're adding loft to the club, okay? And it's hard to hit the golf ball solidly. And what happens is your balance is maybe 50-50, or a lot of players have what's called a reverse weight shift, where there's actually more weight on their trail leg, and the shaft leans away from the target rather than towards it. And this adds loft to the club, which makes the ball is going to go higher and shorter when it's hit solidly. It also means that you're going to hit a lot of shots low on the club face, might top them, or strike them around the first groove, which is going to give you a line drive shot that doesn't really get elevation. Or you're going to hit the ground first and then bounce the club into the ball, which who knows what kind of result you're going to get there. Probably not what you were hoping for. So that's really what the impact position should look for, which you should be looking for in a good impact position, and what you should be feeling in your body. It's that your pelvis is rotated, but the rest of your shoulders are parallel to the target, okay, at impact. How do you get there from the top of the swing? Last thing I'm going to touch on before we turn it over to Brian to explain some of the biomechanics behind this and what's going on in the body. Well, when you get to the top of your swing, I want you to think about the speed to getting to the top of your swing. All right, this was a quote from Payne Stewart. He was doing an interview with Bob Rosberg right after he won the US Open at Pinehurst. And he told, Rossi asked him, he's like, Payne, your tempo is just fabulous this week. You played great and you're known for exceptional tempo. What is your swing thought or what have you been working on to help you, get to that just so silky smooth tempo? And what he told Rossi is like, well, I'm just trying to feel like I start my downswing at the same speed that I finish my backswing. So if you think about that, we all know we take the club back slower than we bring it through, okay? So when you get to the top of your swing, you're not moving real fast. You're just winding up, okay? But what a lot of amateur players do are ones that get out of sync with their body, their timing's off, they're swinging too fast. If you hear someone say, oh, you're swinging too fast, you just got to slow down. Really what they're probably referring to is they see you swinging very fast early in the downswing, okay? And then your body, the rest of your body, mainly your lower body, doesn't have enough time to turn to that ideal impact position. So what happens is instead your hands and arms lead, your shoulders do the turning, okay? So now your shoulders might be anywhere from, who knows, 10 to, well, depending on how fast you were in your transition, maybe even 45 or more degrees left. And that path, a swing path from out to in, a shot that curves off as a slice. It will also lead to pulls where the ball is pulled across, your club pulls the ball across your body. All of a sudden, now you got shots that if they go straight to the left if you're a right-handed player, or they curve to the right if you're a right-handed player. And it also compromises your quality of strike. So when you get to that top of your swing, what you really want to be driving the forward swing is that pelvis. Give it a little bit of time to get turned, okay? And then allow the rest of your body to come through in sequence. So it's lower body and your core. Then lastly, your hands and arms will deliver the club to that impact position, and you'll look like what you see on television, or more like it than perhaps you do if you don't follow that sequence and slow down that position at the top of your golf swing. Okay. All right. So Brian, it's enough of me. Let's hear what you have to say.
Cool. Thanks, Ryan. Yeah, I mean, all that's really important, and this will get down to we're going to talk about power, not just in the golf swing, but how you generate power in training. And one of the things that we talk about as far as producing speed in your golf swing, and I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. We'll go over some slides of this. How do we produce speed in the swing? Well, TPI really has, they break it down into 4 quadrants. And I'm going to bring this screen up. And so TPI calls this the golf speed factors. So there's 4 factors you'll see here. So all things being equal, if you can improve one of these factors, and I'm going to say this a lot today, all things being equal, you'll improve your speed, your club head speed, and we're talking about more club head speed, more distance. So number 1, equipment. Okay, very obvious. If you're using a persimmon driver from 1960 and then you switch to a titanium driver from 2020, you're going to hit the ball further. Okay, pretty simple. Equipment we're not going to deal with much today, but that's an important one. Mobility. We've talked about a lot about mobility on the series, and essentially that comes down to how well you move. So if your joints can move well through a full range of motion, you will hit the ball further than someone whose joints do not move well through a full range of motion. And that's, you know, we've talked a lot about that and about ways you can improve mobility, but that's one of the key components. Technique. Really, that's where Jeff and Ryan, that's their specialty. You can improve your golf speed just by the technique of your swing. And Ryan talks about a lot where you'll have what's called power leaks, and early extensions, one of them we've talked a lot about, you know, reverse pivoting, not getting your weight onto that front leg. Those all can be things that involve technique. I'm more concerned with the body because that's what I do as a trainer. And so for me, the last one is really, really important, and one that I don't think gets enough attention from people, and that's your physical power. So how well can you produce force? That's really what that comes down to. So mobility is great, being able to move. Your equipment matters, your technique matters, but how well can you produce force? How well can you move a load as quickly as possible? So TPI actually did a study where they went through and studied the club head speeds of both amateur and professional golfers. And they came up with some correlations based on some exercises. And these are plyometric or power-based exercises. So a 0 correlation, so 0.00 means that that exercise or your score on that exercise has no bearing on your club head speed. A 1, so a 1.0 means that they are 100% correlated. So if your shot put number is higher, then 100% of the time your club head speed is higher. So if you think about it from a statistical standpoint, anything over 5 or 0.5, I should say, you know, there's a little bit of correlation, and you start to creep up closer to 1, the correlation gets higher and higher and higher. So you can see here, we've got a shot put with your right arm, and this is for a right-handed golfer. And you can see that kind of looks a lot like a golf swing. There's an upper body rotation and then a lower body pivot. So that's kind of what we've talked about all throughout the series. And you can see here that correlation is 0.822. All right, so that's pretty close to 1. So that's a pretty high correlation between a high score on the shot put and a higher speed club head speed. So seated chest pass, 0.802. That's your ability to produce force with just your upper body. So you can see here, her feet are fixed in place. She's not using her legs. She's just producing force with her upper body. And then lastly, you've got the vertical jump. with the correlations a little bit lower, but this refers to your ability to produce force with your lower body. And you can see from a lot of the modern golf swings, there's more of a emphasis on squatting and using the ground to produce force. So that's something that's even more relevant today than it probably would have been 10 or 20 years ago. So what is power? Power is the rate at which work is being done. So if you look at this gentleman or female or whoever's lifting this weight right here, gender neutral looks like, they're doing a snatch overhead. So this is a Olympic lift. If they were to lift that weight, let's say it was 200 pounds, and they were to lift that weight and it took them 2 seconds to lift that weight, and then the next rep, they lifted the same 200 pounds and it took them 1 second to lift that weight, that was a more powerful rep than the first one. The strength didn't change. The load was exactly the same, but they moved it quicker, so the rate at which the work was done was greater, okay? That's power in a nutshell. So if you look at the force equation on the right, force equals mass times acceleration, we're trying to take a mass and accelerate it as fast as we can. So this relates to golf in this way. I don't know if anyone's followed Bryson DeChambeau, and what he's been trying to do over this past year is put on, he said he wanted to put on 50 pounds, not just of muscle, but of fat as well, but just 50 pounds of mass to be able to hit the ball further, because he looked at the statistics of PGA Tour winners, and one of the biggest correlations with winning on the PGA Tour was 1, putting, and 2 was driving distance. So he decided that he's going to really manipulate that side of the force equation. He's going to manipulate his mass. Now, is his acceleration going to slow down because of that? Maybe. Is his mobility going to suffer because of that? Maybe. So it's yet to be seen, but he's really trying to manipulate that side of the equation. So if we're talking about how we want to train for power, there's a hierarchy for movement, and we really have to focus on starting at the bottom and working our way up. So in this slide, it actually starts at the top, but what you start with is stability. You cannot be powerful unless you're strong, and you cannot be strong unless you're stable. Ryan talked about it a lot last week in the stability of your golf swing. You have to have something to push off of that's stable in order to be strong. In order to be strong and powerful, in order to be powerful, you have to have enough strength to accelerate the load. So it starts with stability. I will never work with my clients day one on power. Never day one, okay? We start with stability, we work towards strength, and then power comes last. But power is still part of the equation. It just comes on a little later. So when you work out and when you're exercising or just going through your everyday life, your muscles have different types of tissue and different types of muscle fiber that respond differently and have really different characteristics and jobs in your body. So slow twitch muscle fiber is what's called type 1 muscle fiber. Type 1 muscle fiber is built for endurance, and it's built to produce energy at an efficient rate, but slowly, okay? So type 1, think about an endurance athlete, a marathon runner, a long distance runner, something like that. Fast twitch muscle fiber is the exact opposite. It fatigues very quickly, but it produces a lot of force, and it's the most powerful muscle fiber there is. It also has the largest potential for growth. So if you think about a golf swing, there's a lot more type 2 muscle fiber involved in a golf swing. It's a very ballistic motion than slow twitch muscle fiber. So if you want to train to produce more power in your swing, you should probably try to work more with the type 2 muscle fiber instead of type 1. So how does that work? So we're getting all sciencey on you, so stick with me. It'll come back to golf soon. So this is a motor unit. And this is how your brain and your nervous system relays the message to the muscle fiber. So the muscle fiber connects to what's called a motor neuron, which connects to your nervous system, which connects to your brain. Your brain says, put your left foot in front of your right. The message goes down through your nervous system to the motor neuron, and the neuron sends the message to the fiber, and the fiber moves the muscle, moves the bone, okay? The bigger the motor unit, the more difficult the task, we'll put it this way. So we're gonna try this out right now. So everybody, whether you're standing, sitting, I want you to take your foot and just tap it very lightly on the floor, okay? Just tap your foot very, very lightly. Just see how that feels. See how your brain reacts to it. And how long we think we could do this for? Hours, potentially days. You could probably tap it for quite a while. Now I want you to tap your foot as fast as you can. Go, 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 fast, 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 fast. And you probably run out of steam in about 10, 15 seconds, max. This is the difference between type 1 and type 2 muscle fiber. That first instance where we're tapping the foot slowly on the ground, we're using type 1 fibers. When we try to produce explosive force, we use type 2s, but they fatigue really quickly, okay? And so the size principle says that under load, the motor units are recruited from smallest to largest. So in that duration of you tapping your foot, you worked through the type 1 muscle fibers. When they could no longer carry out the task, the type 2 fibers are called upon, and then those ones fatigue, and then you're no longer able to complete the task. So think of it, you can think of it this way as an army. So the type 1 fibers are the infantry, the foot soldiers. You send the foot soldiers in first. If they can't do the job, then type 2s come in. They're the cavalry. They're the big guns. Okay, they do the really big, heavy tasks, but they fatigue quickly, all right? So how does this relate to training for power? So if you can see here, the red is our type 1 muscle fiber. And on that continuum, you've got force production going from low to high. And then you've got neural activation going from high to low, or from low to high, excuse me. So that red, these red circles over here, is where most people spend not only their days and their lives, but even when they're in the gym. They're dealing with low force production, which means they're not lifting very heavy weight, with much acceleration, which in turn doesn't really activate the motor units that are necessary to trigger growth in those type 2 fibers. So the sweet spot is right in here. This is the power sweet spot. High force production, and remember, force is mass times acceleration. So that doesn't necessarily mean the heaviest weight. It could mean a weight that you're moving as quickly as possible. So we've got mass times acceleration is your force production, and that activates all that neural signaling in your brain. So think about this from a brain perspective. This is a lot about your nervous system and your brain, not about muscle. So Bubba Watson is a really powerful golfer. He's not the most muscular guy in the world, but his brain and his nervous system can fire and trigger the most motor neurons to be able to produce as much force as possible. Okay? So this is what's really cool about fibers, is that there's a continuum of your muscle fiber. It's not just one or the other. So you've got type 1 on one side and type 2 on the other. In the middle, there's kind of a mismatch of hybrid fibers. And what's really great about resistance training, and why I call it the fountain of youth, and Ryan's heard me call it that before, is that resistance training allows you to change those fiber types over time. So depending on the way you train or the way you live, your fibers that are in the middle there, those hybrid fibers, will either transition to type 1 or type 2. So if you sit around, you don't do a lot of exercise, you don't walk, you don't run, you don't really tax your body in any way, those fiber types are going to turn into type 1s because you don't need the type 2s. This is very much a case of if you don't use it, you lose it, okay? If you train in a way where you're utilizing type 2 fibers, speed training, heavy weight, trying to plyometrics, trying to produce as much force as possible, those fiber types will transition to type 2 because your body needs them. This is how you get better. This is how you can be more powerful, by trying to incorporate this in your training. Like I said before, it's part of the spectrum. There's technique, there's mobility, those are all important. But if all things are equal, if you are more powerful and you have more of an ability to use your type 2 muscle fiber, you will hit the ball further and you will be a better golfer, okay? That's really simple as it gets. Now, you might say, well, you know, I'm older. I don't really care about power training. I don't care about how far I hit the ball. You know, I just want to move. I just want to be able to pick up my kids and play with my grandkids and all that stuff. Well, that's great. And that's what you should aim for. But this goes beyond sports and athletics. This goes into everyday life. So there's a study here from 2017 about type 2 muscle fiber atrophy in elderly female hip fracture patients. So there's something called sarcopenia, which is your loss of muscle mass. And this happens as you age, but especially those type 2 fibers. So if you don't lose them, or excuse me, if you don't use them, you will lose them through sarcopenia. So they studied these women that had had hip fractures. And the vast majority of these women had a lack of type 2 muscle fiber. Well, what does that mean? That means if you're in a situation where you need to be powerful, you need to act quickly, your body doesn't have the ability to do it. So if you fall and you have to catch yourself, that's a really powerful act. That takes some work being done in a small amount of time. So if you don't have the power capabilities, you fall, okay? So this goes beyond golf. This goes into, how do we want to live when we're older? How do we want to move when we're older? And this is the biggest reason when people ask me, my friends or family or potential clients, Brian, I have 3 hours a week to exercise. What should I do? And the answer to me is always, you need to lift weights. And this is why. This is one of the reasons why. Because this is, quite frankly, you could say this is hyperbole. I don't think it is. Could be life altering, life changing in the way that your body can age, and you can slow down that aging process. And a lot of that has to do with type 2 muscle fiber. So it's not only going to make you a better golfer, Ryan, it's going to save your life. How about that? So with that ringing endorsement, I'm going to go over to Jeff. Jeff's going to talk a little bit more about the impact position. I'm going to come back at the end and I'll give you some takeaways as far as what kind of exercises you can actually do to increase your power and increase your capabilities of producing force. But Jeff, go ahead and take it over.
Sure. Hope everybody's doing well. I'm Jeff Backinson. I'm just going to share my screen. First thing first, I find that to be extremely fascinating. Just listen to Brian speak about biomechanics and in relation to the swing. It's definitely an evolution that's happening with professional golfers' bodies. I've worked in the private sector. I know that that's been a huge upgrade, even in my past employment, bringing on TPI certified trainers and just working together to build the body and the swing is crucial. So let me just share my screen here. And everybody, can you see this, guys? Okay.
Yeah, we got you.
So quick intro. Again, I'm Jeff Atkinson, PGA Certified Professional. Joined Lynx a little over a year ago now. It's definitely flown by. This pandemic's been awful, but we'll get back in. I spent 5 years post-college graduation traveling up and down the East Coast, working between Florida and New England, between New Hampshire and Boston area. Love to play, love to practice, specifically love to teach. Taught really all skill levels. My sweet spot for moving forward when we do open back up, it's going to be in the evenings or on weekends. So if you're working and you wanted to take a lesson at night, or if you were around on the weekends, you wanted to pop in and get a quick one, that's probably going to be best for me. But yeah, like I said, I've learned a lot from Ryan and Brian and a lot of past instructors in the past. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. First thing I wanted to just speak about, and this basically goes right in line with what Ryan mentioned in the beginning, right? I put a picture here of what I would consider to be pretty optimal impact. Forward shaft lean, he does, and this is, I don't know how old this guy is, but he's doing a great job of transferring his weight, getting into his left side a little bit as the club's coming into impact. You can see his hip, as Ryan mentioned, is out over his left ankle. He's a right-handed player. And this is something that I actually have started to do, and with my clientele and people that I'm teaching, doesn't even matter who you are, is how do we get the feel for at the bottom what is proper? Because there's no right way to swing the club, specifically as you're rotating back, right? There's ways to generate more power. There's ways to be more consistent. But what matters most is when the club is at the bottom. How are we squaring the face? And is the path proper? So if we can get you to the feel of that impact position, right, you can just stand there and do some stretching, do some mobility exercises. But, I actually even before I take the club back at this point, I've started to develop the habit of trying to get myself a feel for where am I going to have my hands, where am I going to have my lower body as far as my hips and my shoulders at impact. And that's sort of my last move before I start to take the club back, before I reset and pull the trigger. Another example, right, of somebody who has an absolutely bizarre move, but can't have a better impact position most of the time is, that new star. What's his name? Matt Wolff. Yeah, so he was on the match. Matt Wolf is very twitchy, very quirky, but he is long and he is consistent, right? He gets the club back to this position. So if you can work on, no matter what you're doing with the club and your body, just getting that, you know, your hands square and the club face, the proper position, that's great. Over here on the right, I actually purchased this. It's called the Speed Trap. It's interesting. It's player dependent for sure, but what this does, you can actually use some tees. I've done this with clients in the past who are having a hard time with their path and squaring the club face. So I'll put in tees in the ground similar to this, right? Sort of to force your club to move through what you call a invisible window, right? These are soft, so similar to tees, you're not going to injure yourself. You're not going to, hurt your equipment. It's just a great drill to understand how's the club moving on the way down, right? That's important. Any questions, feel free to kind of pop in at the end. Next slide for me, and this is, I think, my last one, is I just wanted to talk a little bit about some drills because I think that that's huge, specifically in this time of the pandemic and just being shut down. We all are extremely excited golf is back, and I think that having the ability to go practice or play and walk and get out there is awesome. So these are some drills you guys can use. Here's the eye line, same thing I just showed. It's also known as the Speed Trap. Like I said, if you want to put some tees in, if you think you slice, right, you can get a little window going. Just make sure that you're swinging down the line. This next one, I actually have this training aid. This is great for outside too, and it's good for in the facility looking at your numbers. This is using alignment sticks to, again, force yourself to swing through imaginary windows. On the way down, on the way up, you can put the alignment stick really anywhere. You can put it next to your ball. You can put it behind you. You want to have a good understanding of what you want the club to do, right? You know where you want the impact to be. This sort of forces you, right? If you swing what we'd call over the top, or for a right-handed player, with a left to right path, you're going to strike that alignment stick. And is it going to hurt? Probably it could hurt, but it's a great drill just to force you to get the feel, even if you're just going to do it on practice swings. Last drill in the bottom right-hand corner. I hope you guys can still hear me. Okay. Is an interesting one, and it's certainly player dependent, but getting yourself up against a wall, right? This is what I would call an awesome drill for somebody who tends to slice the ball as a right-handed player. Why do you slice? Well, the club moves left to right. You're swinging over the top. Your upper body's rotating too fast. The club, you're using your arms to pull down. This is going to, if you can swing back and just feel the club sort of rest on a wall, I wouldn't recommend doing it on a wall that you are worried about scratching, but your feel should be to just get the club back. You got your good rotation. And as you're bringing the club down, the tendency for a slicer is to come too quick. So the club would leave the wall. You want that club head to sort of drag down, and then you're going to complete the swing. That's going to help you not swing what we call over the top or a left to right path. Again, these are recommendations. They don't work for everybody, but every swing's a little different. And I think just from people that I've helped out in the past, these are three that are really awesome to improve and become more repeatable, specifically at the bottom, which I think is huge with so many different instruction types and tips and tricks. There's really, for me, it's what's going on down at the bottom. Mobility, I'm going to let Brian really kind of get back into this, but these are some stretches that I've started to really do. I'm not going to lie to you. Probably just anybody that says they stretch every day is probably fibbing a little bit. I'd be lying if I told you that I was stretching every day before we started doing these webinars, but I've started to really focus on these three stretches. And even just last night playing a quick 9, I noticed a little bit, I just felt better. I really felt better, and I felt like I was able to rotate specifically, I guess, as I was getting the club back. I've always been a little handsy. That's what typically people are. I'm no exception. So we've got our hip, back, and core stretch here. I love the cat-cow. It's kind of awkward looking for sure, but it's great for my posture. And here's a good one to always, that I do every time I go to a golf course before I hit a ball, is you put a club across your chest and you rotate. You want that club to be pointed where the ball is. You can see here my mouse moving over the guy in the middle. That is pretty, I mean, if it's not perfect, it's damn close to being perfect rotation at the top. So huge, pairing the two for power with mobility and just a constant grind to focus on impact. You know, I would tell you, start off with, you know, your wedges and just really get that impact position at the bottom and go from go from there. So that's it for me. My contact information is right here. I know that this is being recorded, so happy to help, like I said, nights and evenings. And I'll pass it back to Brian. Hopefully that helps you guys that are out there and looking for something to improve upon.
Cool.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thanks, Jeff.
No problem.
So I just wanted to just to let everyone know, if you do have any questions, just type them into the chat box. We'll get to them at the end. I wanted to touch base really quickly. I know we're running out of time here. On, let's say that we've handled those part of the quadrants that we've talked about. We've handled mobility. We've handled our technique with Jeff and Ryan. We're getting lessons. We're working on our impact position. Our equipment's fine. You want to hit the ball further. How do I become more powerful? So these are the ways we do it. So type 2 muscle fiber, like we talked about, responds to different ways to train. So these are the 3 ways. Speed, okay? So we're going to try to accelerate a weight as fast as we can. Maximal fatigue. So that means you're going to have to take your body past the point of fatigue. A lot of people don't do this in the gym. You can do it safely. Now this, like I said, this requires the stability first. But if you go to maximal fatigue, that's when you start to use the type 2 fibers. Remember, they're the cavalry. You don't bring the cavalry in to fight a small army. That's got to be a big army. All right. And then maximal strength. So if you have a weight that you can only lift for 1 rep, you're going to have to use type 2 muscle fiber to do that, because remember, they're the bigger, stronger fibers. So let's go over some ways we can work on that in a safe manner. Like I said, if you're not stable, this is not the type of training to do. If we're stable and we've got a good base of strength, we can start to move through some power. So one way is just a simple jump, okay? Plyometrics. Let's say we're doing air squat, and we're gonna be here, and we're gonna squat down, up and down, okay? So we're just moving at a nice pace. If we're gonna really try to fire our type 2 muscle fibers, we're gonna try to explode up from the ground into a jump squat. So what we'll do, we'll set up nice and even, get a solid base under us. We're gonna use our arms to help facilitate this jump. So we sit back into a hip hinge, and then we jump as high as we can. And then we stop, we reset, and we do it again. Lost my hip. So the key with this type of training is that we're training for speed. This is not the time to train for fatigue, okay? We don't do 15 or 20 reps of this, because remember, the type 2 muscle fibers fatigue quickly. So once the speed of your jump slows down, set over, okay? That's power training. Speed slows, we stop the set. Okay, so that's number 1. Number 2, we can try to do some forceful rotations. Remember, golf is a rotational sport where we're moving in an explosive way. So you can take a golf club, we're gonna get in a half kneeling position, and do a couple first where we have our straight arm, and we're just gonna do some chops, and then slowly try to work your way up to a 10 out of 10 speed. So I'm going nice and slow. So now I'm going up to about a 4 or 5. And then I'm going to breathe in and go up to a 7. And then I'm going to really try to move this club. Okay? Accelerate as fast as you can. So remember the force equation, mass times acceleration. You're not going to be able to accelerate a heavy weight very fast. If you can only lift something once, it's not going to move very fast. You're going to move it pretty slow. So that's another great way to improve your acceleration. Let's say you're a bench presser and you're bench pressing 100 pounds. If you can bench press 100 pounds a couple times and that's it, that's a pretty heavy weight for you. So this is what you do. You cut that weight in half. You take 50 pounds. You do 3 or 4 reps, and you accelerate the weight as fast as you can. Because even though you're using less mass, because you're accelerating it faster, you're going to end up producing more force. All right. And that's the equation that we're dealing with here. So you can take all this kind of training or this type of techniques into your training. Number one, if you've never done it before, go hire a trainer. You can send me a message after this. You should be working with somebody who knows what they're doing, because this is a way that you can actually injure yourself if you're not doing it correctly. So go work with a trainer or go work with a training program that's appropriate for your ability level. Okay. But this is something everybody should be doing. Doesn't necessarily have to be young, old, in shape, not in shape. As long as you've got the stability, you can train this way. Okay. Any other questions? I'm out of breath from
Brian, since we don't have any questions yet, I just want to relate that to the golf swing. Think about these exercises, right? If you're down on your knee doing these chops and you're wobbling a little bit, you're accelerating too fast for what you're able to support. Your stability is sacrificed. The golf swing's really no different. So if you're not stable in the golf swing and you're flailing, as I call it sometimes when I see students, they get to the top and then they're trying to be explosive. Their posture's compromised, they're leaning, their head's bobbing, all different types of things because they just don't have the strength and the stability to support it. So there's, just like Brian is saying with these exercises, the same thing's true with the golf swing. So you've got to swing at a speed that you can support. And the reason is the number one way to improve your distance is to strike the center of the golf club, okay, with the golf ball. And if your stability is compromised, it's really tough to hit the center of the club. You can increase your swing speed, but if you're hitting it all over the club face, you're going to lose more distance than you're actually going to, that's the number one power leak, let's say. Your club head speed, I get into Lynx and I'm working with students and they get excited when their club head speed starts going up. But then they say, well, but why is the ball not going any further? Well, they're increasing their speed, but they're not doing it in an efficient manner. And everyone, like, it's fun to hit a 300-yard drive, but if it's 300 yards into the woods, you're probably better off just rolling it down the fairway. At least you're advancing in the right direction. So just be thoughtful of that.
Yeah, I know. Ryan's describing my game perfectly there with the 300 yards in the woods, and he saw it the other day. But I think, I'll say it again, all things being equal, if you're trying to move explosively and your technique and your mobility is sacrificed because of that, then the net gain is going to be negligent. You're going to have a net loss. Okay. I think DeChambeau is actually a really, really good case study of what we talked about earlier. Him trying to improve his mass and improve that force equation by adding body weight. I'm really interested to see how he does just as far as hitting the ball. Does he hit the ball further just because he added mass? Because I would venture to guess that his mobility has suffered, and really maybe his technique has suffered too. Ryan, you probably work with people that have changed their body type, and this happens with high school athletes all the time. You know, they shoot up 6 inches from their sophomore to junior year. All of a sudden, they can't walk and chew gum at the same time. They've lost their body control. So you've got to be able to improve one part of that quadrant without sacrificing the other, and that's hard. Because if you've done anything where you've increased your mobility, maybe some of your power suffered because of it, but maybe and the other way around, if you've increased your mass, your mobility suffers. So just like Ryan said, you can't sacrifice one for the other and hope for optimal results. Okay, so any questions? This is the last call. We're running up on an hour here. Questions on power training, questions on impact position in the swing. If you've got any questions, type them in there. I'll go over our offerings at Lynx one more time for you guys. We do have a golf fitness program that incorporates some of the power training that we talked about here today. It incorporates mobility, hip rotation, shoulder mobility, all things we've talked about throughout the course of the series. And power is one of the ones that we will address in the golf fitness program as well. So let me know if you're interested in that. We do have a program called True Coach where we can get you the workouts directly to your phone. You can do them from home. They're all body weight only exercises, which is great for this time of year. This time in the world, I should say. And, hopefully we're back in the gym soon. We're hopeful that within the next couple of weeks, Lynx might be open for business, but we're waiting on Governor Baker for that. But Ryan, anything else from you or Jeff?
No, nothing to add, Brian. Well done.
Nope.
Stay tuned, folks, for future opportunities. Right now, we're trying to line up another webinar, but yeah, we'll be in touch via email if we have something available in the next week or two.
Yeah, and we're going to continue to do these hopefully. And if there's anything you guys want to hear or topics that you'd want us to discuss, just let us know. We covered most of the swing throughout this series, and there's ways we can go deeper and deeper for sure. But any topics out there that you guys are hoping to see, just let us know, and we'll see you guys down the road. Thanks again for coming.
Thanks, everyone.